Welcome to the Mildura Weekly, and joining me today is the Victorian Leader of the Nationals and Deputy Opposition Leader, Peter Walsh. Peter, welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, Peter, you're also Shadow Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, Minister for Agriculture and Shadow for Decentralisation. What brings you to Mildura?
So I think, obviously the state election was late last year, rolled pretty much straight into a federal election, so all the elections are out of the way now for a few years. So particularly up here with my decentralisation hat on, catching up with stakeholders. You've got some issues up here that there wasn't enough money made available collectively from state and federal government for the Mildura South Sports Precinct, and all the issues that are happening around Murray Basin Rail at the moment.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, unfortunately, Peter Crisp lost his seat at the last election, and 2022 is a little way down the track, but I'm sure the Nats will be keen to win the seat back.
We'll be putting forward a very strong candidate at that particular time. The election is the election. You have a new member here, and she will do whatever job she does over the next 4 years. But I suppose as a Shadow Minister, as a Leader of the National Party, we'll be in and out of this area regularly, getting information, talking to stakeholders, to be a voice, particularly around that decentralisation issue. You look at the growth in Melbourne, the population growth in Melbourne, we need to get more of those people out into regional Victoria. One of the things we think that we put forward last time, which is still relevant, is you need good, fast, reliable public transport. European style trains, I think, is something that we'll be continuing to talk about, because without that sort of public transport, you're not going to get people to necessarily live outside Melbourne.
Yeah, would really open the state up, wouldn't it, if we could get to that level?
I think we've got we had a firm commitment for something like $19 billion over 3 terms of Parliament to actually totally change the face of public transport in Victoria. That's something we'll be continuing to talk about.
And just briefly on the election again, we've just had the federal election. Of course, there was a 3-cornered contest in the seat of Mallee. You'll face that prospect most likely for the seat of Mildura in 4 years' time. How will that see things pan out?
I don't fear 3 contests at all. We'll put forward whoever the candidate will be at that particular time, and it will be up to us and the candidate to sell their wares to the voters, and the voters will decide.
Now, last week the Andrews government finally got their controversial fire services bill through the upper house. What impact is that going to have, do you think?
I think it will take some time to see that impact, but I think the fact that the CFA won't have their own dedicated CFA staff, they'll be staff that are seconded across from Fire Rescue Victoria, I think is not a good model. And you'll see, I think over time, the fact that the decision makers will be more favouring the career firefighter stations and the resources that go into them versus the volunteer brigade. So if you look at the truck fleet in Victoria, supposedly the trucks are not supposed to be any more than 20-year-old. You're seeing a lot of brigades now with older trucks than that. There is not the money being made available for trucks, for the resources that the volunteers need versus all the money that's actually going into career-only stations. So the great strength of the CFA over the years has been the volunteers and the volunteer numbers, and particularly the volunteers out of those Melbourne outer suburbs, that when you've got a major bushfire, a campaign fire as they call it, the surge capacity of those volunteers who will go out and do their 3 and 5 day stints is vital to those campaign fires. We don't want to lose that capacity, and there's a real risk with this whole thing that a lot of those volunteers will just disappear.
And in the news up here and throughout the state, the issue about the Murray Basin Rail project stalling. I know you've been particularly scathing of the Andrews government, particularly the Minister for Transport, Jacinta Allen. Your view on all of this? Well,
it was a project that the concept was developed up, and was actually the Victorian component of the money was allocated in our last budget. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do what has been envisaged for North and Western Victoria, to standardise and upgrade the rail system, something that had been desperately needed. And in my view, Jacinta Allen, the Minister for Transport Infrastructure, has just totally bungled that project. It's just poor project management that has led to where we are, where the project is not finished, it's effectively out of money, and the work that has been done, as I understand it, that some of the workmanship's not up to scratch either. So under our system of government, the buck should stop with the Minister, and in this case the Minister is Jacinta Allen, and the buck should stop with her. They can find literally billions of dollars to cover cost overruns on projects in Melbourne. They need to stump up the money to finish this project as it was originally envisaged, to get that fast turnaround of trains, to get the freight efficiency out of up here.
And do you think they'll be able to get some more federal money on the table? Or?
Well, I think ultimately that's a discussion that will have to be had with the Commonwealth, but the responsibility needs to rest with the Andrews government to actually stump up real money to fix their mess. This business about just pointing to the Commonwealth saying it's your fault, we've got no responsibility here. The responsibility rests with the Andrews government, with Jacinta Allen, and they need to stump up real money to get the project back on track.
Yeah, and of course, just finally, it has real impact locally with companies like Seaways, and I know you've spoken to them this visit. They want a 24-hour turnaround ideally in their business, and that seems a long way off.
It does, and we've been out and met with them this afternoon, and this business about having to, the line speed restrictions are there at the moment, particularly on the Maryborough to Ararat line, and having to go out via Ararat to get to port. Just means that whole concept of a 24-hour turnaround is just unachievable at the moment. That was what was promised out of this. That's what should be delivered by the Andrews government.
Peter, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to doing it next time I'm up here.
Thank you. And you can see more news at milduraweekly.com.au.